Hi, everybody, and thanks so much for being here today for another episode of Deborah Kobylt Live. We have a really important story to talk about and a wonderful guest in studio with us today, Rebecca Schaper. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Deborah.
Fascinating story you have, and I like to say you're a friend of the show because you've been on our show before, but this time you're in studio with us, so it's actually a pleasure to meet you.
And it's pleasant to meet you in person, too, as well.
The book you wrote, The Light in His Soul, Lessons from My Brother's Schizophrenia. Beautiful, beautiful book.
Thank you.
And really, I'm going to have you start about your brother, Call Richmond. Clearly, he had schizophrenia, and your family. There was abuse there, and a great deal of abuse, and you write to tell about it. So let's talk about why did you write The Light in His Soul, Lessons from My Brother's Schizophrenia, please.
Because I saw into his soul and not his disease. And I knew that my brother was gifted. And the book tells the experience. And he was a very sensitive being. And I learned so much from him, and he was the catalyst of the film, which was prior to the book. The book is the spine.
From the film, which is called A Sister's Call.
Yes.
That's a documentary.
Yes, and the documentary is the spine of the book.
What was A Sister's Call about?
The Sister's Call was about how my brother and I found each other after 20 years, and he was homeless, broken with schizophrenia. It talks about the miracle on how we found each other. And he was the catalyst of the film to break all the addictions in my family. That goes with suicide, sexual abuse, alcoholism, every addiction you can think of.
Both of your parents
Yes.
died by suicide.
Yes, 11 years apart.
11 years apart. Your mother first.
Exactly, 1977, and that's when my brother just hit the road.
He hit the road.
Yeah.
How old was he when he left?
He was about 20, 21.
Sorry, let's back it up a little even before that.
Sure.
Before Mom took her life, what was life like? What was life like growing up in your home with your dad, whom you say abused all of you and your sister, I believe?
My daughter.
Your daughter.
I didn't know until later. Yeah.
What was life like growing up with Mom and Dad?
You know, there were some very happy times, but there were also some very sad times. My mother was also paranoid schizophrenia as well. She heard voices as well, and she drank a lot. She tried to mask it with alcohol, but she was a beautiful soul. She tried so hard to not show it and to be the loving mother, and I saw that through her. My father, that was different. He was very controlling, very controlling. He tried to control my mother's drinking. There was abuse, physical abuse, between the two. I'll never forget a time when my mother was pregnant with my younger brother, and this is when I was little, and she was sitting on one side and he was sitting on the other, and he kicked her in the stomach when she was about 8 months pregnant.
Oh.
But he was a very troubled soul as well. He was extremely troubled, and I do believe he had severe depression as well, and trauma, and
clearly.
PTSD, because he fought in World War II. He had PTSD too as well.
Did he ever seek help, your dad?
Not until the very end, not before he decided to take his life.
And you said in the book that he took his life, you believe, primarily because of what he had done. He couldn't live with himself.
All the guilt. He had a suicide note, and in that note he said, I thought I was the responsible one. I don't know where it all went wrong. And he said, Call always said I was never happy anyway. Call my brother.
Call your brother who took off.
Yes.
For nearly how many years?
20 years. And see, let me just hold that thought right there. I do believe that Call was picking up all the chaos in our family, and that because they are very sensitive souls, they're very sensitive, they're very intuitive, because I saw that. And I can say this and be very confirmed with what I'm saying. I know that he took it all on, and then he hit the road. And then after 20 years, we found each other through a miracle.
Let's talk a little bit about schizophrenia, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. From what you know and through your experience, are we born with schizophrenia? Does it develop due to what's going on in our environment? A little bit of both? What do you think?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
Yep, absolutely. And they're still doing a lot of more research on it as well. But there's so much we can learn from that.
What kind of voices did he hear in his head? And also your mother, you said, was a paranoid schizophrenic. Is that correct? What kind of voices did she hear? And were they telling her something? What were they saying?
I'll never forget when I was still living at home, and my mother was out on the front porch, and I heard her talking. And I went out there, I said, "Mom, what's going on?" She said, "These people are talking to me." But I never, at that point, I still didn't understand, because I was in my teenage age. And she said, "These voices are just talking to me." And I know in one of the letters that she wrote to her psychiatrist, she said, "These voices are talking to me. I hope that God still loves me."
Did you ever ask her in later years what were they saying to her?
No, because she died in 1977, and it was still pretty new to me at that, what it was all about, because I was 22, 23.
How did she take her life?
Pills and alcoholism. And, yeah.
How old were you?
About, I'd say 23, 24. I'm not good on dates, but...
Yeah, but young.
Yeah,
You were a young
about,
person to take that on and then be left with siblings and your dad, who clearly he abused you physically and abused you mentally. Did you get out at that time too, or were you still home?
No, that was during my high school days. And I knew at one point something wasn't right. I didn't know what a pedophile was back then. But I knew something wasn't right, and I took a stance and kicked him out of the bed. And
Your father?
And said that was done. It was it.
Did you report it?
Like I said, I didn't know what a pedophile was. No, I still loved my father.
I understand.
You know, I still loved my father. And here's what I'd love to say to your audience is, I feel very grateful that I have this opportunity to talk to other people through my experience. If I hadn't experienced this, I wouldn't be sitting here, you know?
That's what you said to me. You said through Call, through your mom, through your dad, because you had the strength and the help to get through to the other side. That's not easy, and most people may not ever get there, and I can't imagine your journey to get to where you are today, but you did it. And you wrote about it, and you did a film about it, and I know you're here because you want to help other people who are going
Absolutely.
through it. Yeah.
The film and the book is to give others hope through love and forgiveness, and through whatever challenges you have in your life, there are lessons to be learned, and turn it around and create a gift.
Well, very often with mental illness, they lash out, right? Someone who is mentally not stable, mentally ill,
Right.
and then people just want to get rid of them. Get rid of them, get them out of here. But there's a level of understanding that may not be happening, or perhaps something's getting lost in the connection. Am I right? What would you say about that?
I would say to have more compassion. Get yourself help as well. Get support. And that person may not be on the right type of medication, which is very difficult to narrow down. My brother was on medication, but I felt like it veiled who he really was.
Right, it makes you dopey.
Yeah,
right. He was dopey.
You're just still. I mean,
Yeah.
But I have to commend him. Think about this: being on the road for 20 years, surviving on the road, but yet having the wherewithal to keep going. And he didn't take his life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
He wanted to live.
he wanted to live. And the reason I do believe that my brother and I had this soul contract with each other, that we found each other for a reason, because he was the catalyst of the film and the book.
And
No
that is
doubt.
not just for you and not just for him, it's for everybody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That-
use
that's
this.
the whole purpose.
This is the story.
Yes.
And this can be you, this can be your friend, this can be your relative. Let's talk a little
Yes.
bit about your brother when he
Yes.
left.
Okay.
So what happened? He just left? Did he leave a note, or he just disappeared?
He disappeared, and he hit the roads. He traveled everywhere on the trains, and once in a while he'd pop back in and then leave again. I'll never forget when my father died by suicide in July of 1988. That couple of months later in October, I got this collect call, when you could call collect. My brother called me. He said, "Rebecca, where's Dad? I can't. Where is he?" Because he was on the roads, and that's when I had to tell him. And so he was in St. Louis at the time, so we got him
Oh boy.
a Greyhound bus and brought him back.
And then did he leave again after
Yep,
that?
he left again.
He took off again. How did your dad take his life?
With a gun, he shot himself in the heart in the shower.
That's just heartbreaking to me. But he left a note.
Yeah.
Right. And he just felt that he couldn't. He
couldn't deal
probably
with
felt
it.
so responsible for everything.
Oh, he did. No doubt about it. He definitely did. And he had remarried after my mother had passed away, his old girlfriend, and she didn't want anything to do with him on her deathbed as well. So, yeah.
So your brother was gone for nearly 20 years, all told. How did you find him again? Because I find this story to be fascinating as well, right?
Well,
He had a job, right?
Yes, at the last, what I found, the last 6 years before I found him, he was at the Haven of Rest in Anderson, South Carolina. They have a thrift store next door. So they have the patients go out and pick up furniture at people's homes. And this was part of Call's job responsibility. 2 guys, including my brother, got in the truck, drove to this address. He got out of the car, knocked on the door, picked up the furniture, and got back into the truck. He looked at the order form, and he saw Schaper on there. He got out of the car, knocked on the door, and he goes, "Marge, do you know who I am? I'm Call Richmond. I'm Rebecca's brother."
Let's talk about who Marge is.
My husband's mother.
So what did she do at that moment?
She pulled him in, and I happened to be home at that time. She called me and said, "Rebecca, Call is here." And she wanted to be very calm about it, because she didn't want him to,
Take off.
And so
But he wanted to find her, because when he saw her name, he didn't have to go back in.
No.
He
It was
wanted
meant
to
to be.
find. It was meant to be. I tell
Yes.
you that. Now I'm getting goosebumps.
I got goosebumps too, because I was living in Atlanta at the time, and it's about an hour and a half drive. And I got in my car and I flew up there, and we hugged, and it was it's still emotional to me, because it was all meant to be, and I didn't let him out of my sight until the day he passed away.
So when that moment came and you found him, you brought him back then to live with you, right? Is that correct? Or in that area?
He didn't. Honestly, my husband did not want Carl living with us, because
Look, I
he was
understand that
concerned.
too. It was,
Yes,
it's a little
yes.
scary. Someone who has
Yes,
some,
yes, and he wanted to protect both my daughters. But I knew Carl would not do anything. But I had to respect
you have to
that.
respect that. Yeah.
Yes. So I got him in a hotel out of the Haven of Rest. I said, "Just stay here. I'll get you Social Security. I'll put you with a mental health system. Just stay here." So he stood there.
And he stayed.
And we got it all taken care of and got him an apartment. And he was a very quiet person, but very wise.
You say he was very wise. Did he talk about the people who were talking to him? Did he talk about your upbringing, your mom and your dad? Like when you had that time together. Now he passed away of what?
2012 of colon cancer.
Of colon cancer. How many years did you have with him then?
About 14, a little over 14.
14 years from when he came back? Okay, that's a good amount of time
Yes.
to connect,
Yes.
a really good
Yes.
amount of time.
Yes.
Did he talk about that and what it meant to him or write about it or something?
The conversations were a little strained when I would try to really understand what was going on in his mind. But in the documentary, he talking about the voices. He was being interviewed, and he would say they were good voices and then they were bad voices. But he said there was a voice that came over to me saying, I'm going to have to take your mother away. And 2 weeks later was when my mother died by suicide. And in that interview, he goes, isn't that something? Isn't that really something?
So do you think
he said, I
felt
never
something?
told Rebecca that. Absolutely. He knew something was going to
So
happen.
telepathically, really, he was connecting
Very
to Mom.
telepathically. They are. I wouldn't say all of them, but I can express what I experienced with my brother. Yes, and he was able to pick up the phone at times when he was in Greenville and we were living in Atlanta. He'd pick up the phone and just say, Rebecca, what's going on with Lauren? Or what's going on with Kim? And my daughters were very connected with him.
They were very close with him. They got to know him.
Yes, and we loved him. We brought him to our beach house. We engaged him in whatever games we were playing. He would go.
Gosh, he must have felt so loved.
You know, it's interesting because on the one of the questions in the film that I was sitting down asking him, he said, I really appreciate the people who really loved me. And it just and he did. He knew that till the day he passed away, because we were all around him.
Yeah,
it was so sacred, and he knew. Yeah, he was very special. He taught me patience. That's one thing.
he taught you patience.
Yeah, because he'd always say, Rebecca, how's your patience? How's your patience? But yeah.
Was he what was he like growing up? I'm looking here because I took notes on the different chapters that I read. So go ahead. What was he like growing up? What was he like as a kid?
It's very interesting, Deborah. I barely remember my brother growing up.
I wonder if that's because, so they say trauma sometimes you just black out what happened before.
I don't know. I'm finding out there was another secret, but everybody's passed away the way I could find out.
What was that other secret? That
he was probably taken away somewhere. And that's why I couldn't remember, because when I go back in pictures, there's a couple of them with us together, but then there's none.
So maybe your parents felt that there was something in their belief not right, so they took him away.
Could have been. I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. But
anybody around that would remember?
No,
an aunt, an uncle?
No, everybody's gone.
Yeah, I suppose in a way it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't.
Does it?
I had this wonderful, amazing experience with him, and so did my family.
We can skip around a little bit. You reflect on chapter 11, you reflect on your own abuse and its consequences. What were the consequences of your own abuse? If I can interrupt for a minute, because you have a successful marriage.
Yes.
So you've managed to, in your adult life, right? You've managed to have 2 children, daughters, beautiful daughters, and a successful marriage. That's hard because a lot of people can't sustain any relationships. But when you look at chapter 11 and just the title of it alone, I reflect on my own abuse. What consequences?
One is that I kept it a secret from my husband for 9 years while we were married.
That you were abused.
And yes, and at the dinner scene in the documentary is very powerful, and we talk about that, and we talk about the abuse that my father did to my daughter, which I never ever in my life would have thought my father would have done that. Again, I didn't know what pedophiles were. It never occurred to me. We didn't find this out until Kim was 18 years old.
Your daughter.
She got into therapy.
So your daughter talked about being abused. Was your dad long gone then, or was your dad?
Yes, he was gone. I mean, yeah, if he,
How is your daughter now? Because I mean, at least she got the help she needed.
Oh yeah, and it took a while, but she's amazing. She's an entrepreneur herself. She is in the 1% who has fought everything through what she went through.
Well, she had you
and
to help
she's
her too.
Yeah, well, thank you. And she's empowering other women as well. But she is an incredible individual. She really is. And so is my other daughter.
So again, back to your consequences. You told your husband in later years. Was he surprised? Was he upset that you didn't tell him sooner? Or
yes, he was upset.
He
I didn't
was.
tell him sooner. And he said, Rebecca, I would play golf with your your father. And I didn't know at the time. I mean, he was angry. And rightfully so.
Angry at him or
because
angry at
I
you
was
for not saying?
protecting my father. I was protecting my father. And I was putting my father first before my husband.
But isn't that true about abuse victims?
Yes.
I mean, they're trying to make sense of everything. Almost
Yes.
like, did dad really do that? Did he mean to do it? Did he want to do it?
Yes.
He didn't have to do it.
Right.
You know, right? And then you're
Yes.
just sort of protecting the person who abused you, and it gets almost twisted around.
Yeah,
right?
and it's abandonment too. I didn't want to feel abandoned. I still loved my father.
I understand.
As strange as that may seem, but in a way, I understood it all. I understood my mother's illness. I understood it all at a deeper level, and I was able to forgive. And
Isn't that everything?
yes, it is.
Isn't that everything?
Yes.
If you can forgive.
Yes, and that's what got me through. And my daughter was able to forgive, and we were able to talk about this, and we talk about it in the film. It took me 10 years to ask her because it was 14 years of filming, and she said absolutely. And we both felt it would empower mothers and daughters to have that communication, to be open about it as well.
You hear about it in the news all the time about children who are abused, and often the first thing I think of is, where was the mother? Where's the wife? Did she know? And I'm guessing they did, and they stay silent. And I do believe, even if you're so frightened, we do have that responsibility to our children.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. And it was a very healing moment for both Kim and I.
Wow.
To be able to talk about it and seeing her heal. That was the important part for me.
In Chapter 7, you talk about your mission and your family journey. What is your mission, Rebecca?
Mission, and can you narrow that down?
What's your mission in telling your story? What's your mission in your life as you go forward with your 2 adult daughters and your own life, with a very important documentary, the book?
To give others hope. And that no matter what challenges you have in life, there are lessons in those challenges. And you can learn from those challenges and have compassion. Have a lot more compassion to the person who is afflicted with mental illness. I'm still grapple with that word, but and that it's okay to talk about very difficult situations.
I think people become so scared, and then they don't.
That's how you heal. You have to. I've been married to my husband for 46 years, and we've been through a lot.
Wow.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Well, we were able to communicate and talk. Conversation, being very open with each other. It's tough, but you have to understand where that person is coming from and look at that person with compassion. And also the people, I do want to say this too, people who are taking care of the person who has this illness, the caretaker, they need to take care of themselves as well. That's extremely important, because if the caretaker does not take care of themselves, it's going to run them in the ground. It's going to affect them. It's very important and not feel guilt.
I feel like we're not doing enough. You know, when you look at, in Los Angeles, for example, the level of homelessness is based very often on mental issues and therefore drugs, because they can't really, control what's going on in their minds. They turn to drugs
and alcohol.
The situation is outrageously out of control.
Yes.
And nobody knows what to do. When you see that, what do you think? You know, because it could have, people, I think, just don't respond properly. And maybe we need a collection of nonprofits and government and everybody, family working together. Right?
I feel like it's getting better. I think people
so.
are being a lot more open about it and understanding it more. And if you happen to walk on the street and somebody's yelling something at you profoundly or whatever, just keep on going by. Just it's okay. I would not give that person eye contact, maybe a smile, and continue on. Or
why wouldn't you give them eye contact? Is it because it gives them...
depends on how severe. If I pick up that person maybe is on meth, that to me, there's a boundary at some point.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yes.
So if you through all of your research, through all you've been through, what do people do? I mean, in your brother's name, what do you want to make sure people learn? And what should people do if they're in a similar situation of abuse, of schizophrenia? What do people do? Where do they start?
Got to talk to someone. You need support. Have compassion with that person who has the mental illness. Look at their soul. They're human beings.
Yeah, definitely.
And just, I know there are cases where it's so difficult, and I understand that, but just hang in there. There's NAMI. There's some great support organizations.
What's NAMI, please?
National Association of Mental Illness. And it's free.
And there's chapters probably everywhere, right? National
everywhere.
Association of Mental Illness.
And it's everywhere, and it's free. And they have the most incredible support. And the whole family needs support.
Everybody needs support.
Yes.
I know, because it look, just taking care of elderly parents took a lot out of me. I can't imagine a situation where you've got what you had. So you're right. You've got to just grab and reach out for help, which I'm sure Call did, because at least he ended up when he was, I don't know, where was he living? On the streets, not on the streets, in a home?
Everywhere.
When he found,
He was
but eventually he
streets.
found his way home, which is really interesting.
Because, like I say, he was the catalyst of this all, to break the cycle. We broke the cycle in our family.
Yeah.
We broke it.
Yeah. Congratulations to you for
that.
Well,
it was meant to be.
How can people see the film? Because the film is really powerful.
It's
A Sister's Call.
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Just look it up, people. A Sister's Call. And that's after 14 years of filming, right? And of your entire family, basically.
Yes.
Very raw. It's a beautiful film.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful film. And again, the catalyst to the light in his soul. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture of him as well, right? You can see into his eyes in this sketching, right? Photo sketch.
Yeah.
Lessons from my brother's schizophrenia. I really appreciate it. Anything else you'd like to add that maybe we didn't talk about that people should know?
Don't give up. There is hope and there's support out there. Don't give up. And know that there are people there who would be willing to help you, but you have to open up to that person and say, I need help.
There's a lot more organizations now out there talking about all levels of mental wellness, they call it now, right? Mental illness. You're right. There's no stigma. Everybody's got something at different levels.
Oh, yes.
Just reach out and get help. Otherwise,
and be a good listener to that person. That's very important. Be a good listener, and don't tell them what you think they need to hear.
Well, thank you so much.
Well,
I really appreciate you being
Deborah.
here. I think you're Rebecca Schaper, a lovely, beautiful guest. When I read about what you've been through, I have a lot of aha moments. So thank you very much for coming back and sharing your story. And we should do a little screening next time you're in town.
Oh, okay.
Of the film, right?
Well, thank you
talk
very
to your
much.
publicist, my dear friend Darlene. So we should talk to her about that too. Wouldn't that be great? Invite some friends, and
I'd love that. Yeah,
wouldn't that be great? So maybe that's our next one. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for being here and for listening to Rebecca's story. I think it's fascinating, and please pick up her book, take a look at the film, and let us know what you think. And please, you can view our show on Facebook Live and also on YouTube. But if you listen to your podcast, you'll find us on iHeartRadio. You'll find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and honestly, God, anywhere else you get your podcast, just put in our name, Deborah Kobylt Live, and we'll pop up. So thank you so much for being here, for hearing our story, and we'll see you next time.
And
Bye-bye.
thank you, Deborah.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's really very enlightening. I'm, take a little time to really process this. It's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out the other end and telling us about it.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.